The cloud. All right. Good evening, brethren. Welcome to the Grand Lodge's webinar series. This evening we will be talking about Masonic Research Societies and Philalethes. As we've talked about previously, this is not a titled meeting, so please be sure to govern yourselves accordingly. These sessions are recorded. Please do keep yourself on mute during the presentation. If you do need to speak or there's a question, you can use the space bar to temporarily unmute yourself. Send any questions you have to the host via the chat feature, and we will cover them. I'll also open the mics at the end too, if you would choose to ask your question that way. There will be a poll at the end, so please be sure to submit that so that we can get some feedback. And these are all recorded and posted on the Grand Lodge web YouTube channel along, you can access them via the web archive off of the Grand Lodge website as well. Tomorrow we're going to be talking, next week, not tomorrow, next week we'll be talking about Safe Lodge with Most Worship Brother Ray Christensen, and then we'll be talking about Masonic collectibles and a few other upcoming topics. Terry will be joining us again here in March to talk about King Solomon's Temple. So as we've talked about before, we do have the Show and Tell Challenge that will be running through the end of this year. It will we submit a video or an essay or something on one of these questions and win a chance to win that plaque. It'll be a 2021 plaque, but not a 2020 this time around. And with that, I am going to stop share, and Most Worship Brother Terry, the floor is yours if you want to share it up.
Figure out how to share here. Just a second.
Little green button.
Little green button. Yep.
Yep.
Let's see here if it'll come up. Share. There we go. And then I'm going to put this on the slide, full slide here if I can. There we go.
There we are.
Well, there we are. Well, good evening, my brothers. It's a joy to be with you tonight. I'm going to share a lot of information with you tonight, and so please, that's a number of things I'm going to be going over rather quickly. So jot a note down if you've got a question about something or you have something that you'd like me to discuss in a little more detail. I would not be adverse to you asking a question during the presentation, although that's not the normal format that we're using here tonight. But just to let you know, glad to do it. I'm going to try and get my little clicker going here so that I can advance things without having to do much with the fingers. Tonight we're going to discuss an element, major element in the quest for Masonic light. The first question, of course, in Masonry is what do you most desire? But that is only the second most important question in Masonry. You probably realize, or should realize, the most important question in Masonry is, in whom do you put your trust? But because this question is the first question asked, it does signal the significance of the Masonic fraternity's desire to, or a recognition that one of our purposes is, a major purpose is to make each person better understand themselves, their craft, their place in the world, and their work in the world. And we do that through a study of our history, our philosophy, our symbolism, and so much more. Tonight, I'm going to talk about Masonic research societies, and I've decided that I needed to add a section on research lodges and the Philalethes. Now, the Philalethes is a research society, but it's impossible to talk about societies without talking about lodges as well. And so tonight, I'm going to do that as well in this discussion. I want to begin by taking a look at the evolution of Masonry and Masonic education for a few minutes, and be a little bit difficult for you to read this entire slide the way I have it up there. I don't know that there's any other good way to get the pictures off to the side, but that's okay. I want to remind you of some things and in terms of how education and how we have developed education in our lodges. From time immemorial, of course, we began as operative Masons. The master worked with the journeyman to the apprentice, all mouth to ear. Learning skills were given in mathematics, stone carving, engineering, architectural symbolism. The guilds shared customs, traditions, knowledge, and practices that they developed and passed down. Often, most of it was done mouth to ear or by example. The constitutions and old charges, of which there are over 100, exist as the first written records related to Masonry. And they, of course, all existed related to operative Masonry. The Hollowell manuscript, or the Regis poem, as it's called, estimated to be 1390, relates how the craft of Masonry was brought into England during the reign of King Athelstan. That is the legend that is there. It also reminds us and brings us to a history of Freemasonry relative to Pythagoras in Egypt, and then eventually to King Solomon's Temple, and then the 7 arts and sciences, and ultimately the York legend, which is the legend that we use in our craft today in Masonry. The transition period began when lodges grew with accepted and accepted and speculative Masons, and that period of time is suggested to be in the 15 and 1600s. We know it goes back that far. We're not sure if it goes back earlier. In 1425 to 1550, the old charges showed an evolution of the craft and the establishment of craft masonry as we know it, essentially from the flood forward as part of its history. The earliest Masonic ritual is in 1696, that's recorded. That is in Scotland. It is the, forgot the first name of the house. And it gives some of the first ritual related to the entered apprentice degree and the craft ceremony. That is the earliest known written ritual that we have. The Shaw statutes in 1598 were the first written statutes that we have concerning the governance of operative lodges. These would be in Scotland, of course. And the oldest Masonic records come from the Lodge of Edinburgh at St. Mary's Chapel, number 1, the oldest Masonic lodge in the world. And those are dated July 15th, 1599. Interestingly enough, of the operative lodges, just 6 months prior, we have the earliest records of any operative lodge in its minutes. Modern Freemasonry, or speculative Freemasonry, as we all know, began with the Grand Lodge, four lodges meeting together in the Grand Lodge in London in 1717. The Gothic charges were asked to be compiled by then Dr. James Anderson. That was done in 1723, and we had the first set of constitutions as we know them. Books, newspapers, and pamphlets soon followed during this period. The earliest published reference to the fraternity is June 24th, 1721, with the post-sham exposure. Post-sham is, our Post Boy is a newspaper. It was one of the 4 most populous newspapers in London at the time. And that exposure was first discovered by S. Brent Morris. The first ritual exposure in book form is Samuel Pritchard's Masonry Dissected, printed in London in 1730. The Masonic books published in the modern era, it's estimated that there are 80,000 or over 80,000 in North America and 60,000 in Europe. The first Masonic book published, of course, in America is by Brother Benjamin Franklin. Constitutions of the Craft, published in 1734, and the Grand Lodge of Minnesota, as you may know, has one of the known 16 copies in the world. The first Masonic magazine was published in Leipzig, Germany, named Der Freimaurer, or the Freemason. In England, the first work of its kind was published also in 1798. The first Masonic periodicals in the United States were published in 1811. And in the period from 1810 to 2010 in the United States, there have been 680 Masonic periodicals published. Currently, there are only 80 of them left. 45 are Grand Lodge publications, 6 are National Masonic publications, 7 are Shrine publications, 22 are Rite, Templar, Lodge, or Grotto publications. The first Masonic Research Society is Quater Coronati, number 2076. It was founded in 1886 in London, England. In the United States, the first Masonic Research Society was the Philalethes Society, founded in 1928. The first research lodge in the United States was Prince Hall Pythagoras Lodge of Research, and that was in 1890. And the first regular Grand Lodge was the American Lodge of Research number 903 out of the Grand Lodge of New York. That was founded in 1931. We'll talk a little bit more about, more especially this talk is related to the last two items, as I've indicated, Masonic Research Societies and Research Lodges. We're going to begin with research lodges. A research lodge is a particular type of Masonic lodge devoted to Masonic research and education. It is a lodge, and as such, usually has a charter granted from the Grand Lodge or grand body of which it is located. Now, you might assume they're all from Grand Lodges, but we have a number of research lodges that are not chartered by Grand Lodges, but other appendant bodies. I'll talk to you about that a little later. A research lodge does not confer degrees, restricts membership to Master Masons of jurisdictions in amity with the jurisdiction that the research lodge is located in. That is a general rule in most research lodges. Most research lodges meet quarterly, normally with an educational paper prepared or presented to the members. I should also just add, there are some research lodges that only allow membership within the jurisdiction that they are chartered in, and all other individuals that are interested become subscribers, they cannot be members of the lodge. Most research lodges have some type of transactions, proceedings, or a newsletter that is published regularly, and there are research lodges in most countries where Freemasonry exists. We'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. The premier research lodge, Quater Coronati, is the oldest Masonic research lodge, founded in 1886 under the United Grand Lodge of England. It accepts members from all over the world through its correspondence circle, but it is limited to 40 members that are actual members of the lodge. The Book of Transactions, its transactions are called Ars Quarti Coordinatum, which includes the papers that are given at the lodge. It is published every year since 1886. A little bit more about Quater Coronati. Annually you receive, as I've indicated, the transactions. The lodge members of the lodge in a constitution recognized by the United Grand Lodge of England are entitled and welcome to attend its quarterly meetings. Quarterly meetings are generally the rule in England with most of its lodges. Unlike the United States, most of their lodges are set up with quarterly meetings. Members have access to the research services of Quater Coronati. You're entitled to wear the Quater Coronati Correspondence Circle breast jewel and lapel pin. The jewel is there. The cost of membership varies in line with the cost of mailing out the annual meeting minutes or meeting activities. In the United States dollars, in Canada, it would be approximately $60. If it was paid, you receive then a full list of the transactions of Quater Coronati. Usually by January of the new year, they're published in December. I cannot tell you how many members there are in the correspondence circle related to Quater Coronati. I had a call into S. Brent Morris, who is a past master there, and he did not get back with me, but I presume that it's in the thousands, and they basically have their own publishing house as well, although they were running in the red a few years ago, and Brent helped to pull them out of the red with some of his work there when he was a master. I'm sharing some asides here that I just happen to be off the top of my head. There are 91 research lodges that I have identified. I've taken probably 30 hours this last week and going through the lists that I have. 12 are not active or we have no information about them. There are 79 active, a website, Facebook page, or Grand Lodge listing. All research lodges are chartered by the respective grand bodies, but there are 17 that would be of special interest. That is 7 that are chartered by the Prince Hall Grand Lodge, 2 in Washington, D.C., 1 in Georgia, 2 in Kansas, 1 in California, and 1 in Ohio. There are 2 military lodges, basically Civil War related in terms of study, the Frontier Lodge in North Dakota, and in Virginia, the Civil War Lodge of Virginia. Traditional observance, there is at least 1 that I know of, although we could say that many traditional observance lodges essentially act as research lodges because they all require papers to be given, or at least all that I know. There is 1 that is specifically esoteric and dealing with issues with esotericism. That is in California. There is 1 that's Knights Templar. That is in Illinois. These would be chartered by the Grand Body, the Knights Templar. Royal Arch, there are 3, 1 in New York, 1 in Virginia, 1 in Illinois. There is 1 that is philatelic, and that is in New York. Although I believe that group has went dark in the last year or 2. There is a second one that I know of in the world, and that is in London. Scottish Rite has 1 in Oklahoma. There are 7 research lodges that were identified in Canada, 1 of special interest and 1 that you perhaps have heard about, the Internet Lodge of Research in Calgary, Alberta. I would be remiss not to mention our own research lodge here in Minnesota, Education Lodge number 102. They have put out 118 published research articles. The last one, though, was put out only in 1994 in terms of being published. Their motto, they were chartered in 1945. They are one of the older research lodges in the United States. Our motto, or the motto of the Education Lodge 1002, knowledge, wisdom, and freedom. And from their own website, it exemplifies our belief that the search for knowledge and truth will lead us to wisdom and understanding, and with wisdom and understanding, we will defeat the forces of tyranny, intolerance, and prejudice in the world. It's a wonderful statement if you stop to think about it. I've listed their masters, their officers there. Keith Donaldson is the master, Brother James Wallen, senior warden, Jason Lang is the secretary, and Rick Vance, the Leo. They traditionally meet the 5th Tuesday of each month, and the dates are listed there. Their annual dues are $30. They have been rather hit and miss over the last number of years. I was Worshipful Master, the Master of Education Lodge number 1002 in about 1994, 93, 94, when some of the last publications were put out. They have met occasionally, though, because I've been invited to speak occasionally. I have mentioned Clyde E Higman, past Grand Master of Minnesota in 1959. I put him up there because I didn't want to forget him. If you're thinking of Masonic education in Minnesota, perhaps the most significant individual outside of maybe a Dwayne Anderson some years back is our past Grand Master Clyde Higman. He's significant because of his contributions to Masonic education, not only through Education Lodge and the papers that he wrote, but he is considered to be the founder of the Midwest Masonic education group that meets. It is the oldest meeting group of Masonic educators in the United States. And Clyde Higman founded it essentially in I think they've been going since 1949, if I'm not mistaken. A definition of a research lodge. Now we're moving into another group that's closely associated to societies. Another group that's closely associated with research lodges, but obviously far less of them and a little bit more specialized. Research societies are related to research lodges with much the same purpose and fundamentally. They have annual dues which cover the cost of print publications. They usually publish a quarterly journal or an annual publication, possibly a book. Membership may or may not be restricted to just Masons or regular Masons. When it is not, generally, their membership is denoted by their being subscribers. There are a couple of research lodges that do not even have Masons that can be members, such as the Scottish Rite Lodge of Research. All are not for-profit groups, usually under the 501c3 status. All have some annual meeting for their members, and research societies are limited in number to the country where only where Freemasonry exists, and consequently limited also just in total numbers, as we'll talk about in a moment. Comparison of the research societies in the United States. The newest research society in the United States is the Masonic Society. It was founded in the summer of 2008 as a breakaway from the Philalethes Society. It's a quarterly publication, prints a quarterly publication of 40 pages with about 3 or 4 or 5 pages of advertising. Michael Pohl is its editor right now. The cost for 1 year is $45 in the United States and $49 in Canada. It is self-described as the Time magazine of Freemasonry. Has an annual meeting always in February, usually at Masonic Week in DC, and its membership is open to all regular Masons. The journal is a fairly splashy journal for those of you that know of it. It has some good articles. Sometimes it's filled a little too much advertising. Being the Time magazine of Freemasonry, it often has events that are coming up in Masonry and commentary about them, which is one of the few places where you'll find that now. At one time, the Philalethes Society used to do more of that, but does not anymore. I can make many other comments about the group, but and I'll be glad to answer your questions, but I'm going to just move through some of these. The Scottish Rite Research Society was founded in 1991. The editor of the proceedings is Dr. S. Brent Morris. The editor of the quarterly publication is Adam Kendall, our second vice president here for the society. It has a membership, it lists a membership of 4,000, but the last time I talked with Brent, he told me that the membership was probably getting closer to 3,000 than 4,000 right now. The annual membership is $55 in cost. Members receive the Herodom Book of Scholarly Research, quote, access to some of the most thought-provoking ideas in contemporary Masonic research. That is their description of what they do. They also receive the Society's quarterly research journal, The Plumb. Members may receive a bonus book, and they have for the last couple of years, and they have made the value of the $55 very well worth it for those that are a part of that society. They are headquartered, of course, in Washington, D.C. Some other Masonic research and education societies, the Society of Blue Friars, which is headed by its Grand Abbot, Art de Hoyos, was established in 1932. It is an invitational group to recognize Masonic authors. It has an annual meeting in February, also at Masonic Week. It has no fixed ritual or ceremonies, no fees, and very few records. It is one of the truly unique appendant bodies in Masonry. The choice of who the next Blue Friar will be is always made by the Grand Abbot, and the number of friars at any given time can be 20, no more than 20. The Philalethes Society, some of you may be familiar with it. The society is for a society that was for Prince Hall Freemasonry to give a venue for those that seek more light and have light to give. The membership is open to all United Grand Lodge recognized members of all United Grand Lodge recognized lodges and those in amity with Prince Hall Grand Lodges in the United States. It is dedicated to studying the work of Prince Hall and researching the history of Prince Hall and Freemasonry. It publishes a Philalethes magazine, usually quarterly, although that has been sporadic in the last number of years, and the Society membership cost is $35. I do not subscribe to the Philalethes Society, although it does have some good articles. One of its major contributors is Elton Roundtree, who is a member of the Philalethes Society, actually a fellow, and one of the more prolific authors in Prince Hall Masonry today. The Philalethes Society, which I know the most about, was founded in 1928 when 8 prominent Masons who were involved in education and editorial work got together at Cedar Falls, Iowa, deciding that there needed to be an opportunity or a place for brothers that were doing Masonic research and education to publish their work. It is the oldest international Masonic research society in North America. Its dues are $50 a year or $60 international. John Iyer has been our editor for the last 10 years, and he works out of the George Washington Masonic Memorial. The current membership, we have 750 life members, about 800 dues-paying members, and about 50 subscribers. Those subscribers would be non-Masons, as the case might be, but they get the journal or receive its publication. We have a very select group of fellows of the Society that are selected for outstanding research and education and their contributions to Freemasonry and the Society. That number 40, currently we have 34. Right now we have, I forgot to list there for emeriti, there should be 6 and 1 past honorary fellow. When I say emeriti, they do not count in the 40 that we have. We made that as a separate category so that we could open up more fellows to some of our younger members, as the case might be. That was done a number of years ago. The member benefits, we have a 44-page journal that's published without advertising, an e-bulletin that is put out semi-regularly, occasionally book offers, guest lecturing, of which for the last number of years we've done at our annual meeting, as we will do next week at our annual meeting as well, and at the Conference of Grand Masters in North America, and occasional semi-annual education and research seminars. The last one was held in 2017 here in Minnesota at the Masonic Center. Some of the fellows of the Society, a very prominent group. There are 228 fellows currently, 230 fellows that have been named since 1928. All of them, for the most part, have been prominent in Masonic education or research. And some of the past fellows that, of course, in the early years, Harry Haywood, Charles Hunt, Rudyard Kipling, Carl Claudy, Ray Denslow, Albert Beatty, Alphonse Serza, William Denslow, that would be the son, Alan E. Roberts, Jerry Marsingale. Those are all names that if you've been involved in Masonry at all and do any reading, you would recognize. There are currently 28 that are of current fellows. There are 28 that are from North America and 6 overseas. Some of the members of that group include S. Brent Morris, John Mauch-Hilliard, Dick Fletcher from the Masonic Service Association, Robert Davis, Paul Bessel, Michael Paul, the editor of the Masonic Society, John Belton from England, who is in charge of their internet lodge there, Dr. David Harrison from England, Robert Cooper from Scotland, Art de Hoyos, Oscar Elaine, Richard Behrman from Israel. Fellows of the Grand Lodge of Minnesota that have been named, Dwayne Anderson was named in 1996. I was named in 2007, and past Grand Master Ed Helpus was named in 2010. There have only been three fellows of the Society from Minnesota over all of its years. Currently, we offer our members or non-members access to all of our publications from 1929 actually through 2020 now. I'm just putting up the last 2 years. They include all of what are called the masterpiece papers of the Society. When we did not have our own journal, we published through the Rock what we consider to be masterpiece papers. There are a total of 782 of them over those years, and they are all put up in PDF searchable files. All journal issues from our founding of the Society Journal in 1946 are up in PDF searchable files, and there are over 7,000 articles on virtually any and every topic that you can name in Masonry. The files are PDF searchable with a separate titles index. The cost for our members of the Society to access that file, which is a Dropbox file, in perpetuity is $25, or if for a non-member, they can purchase it for $75. It may be purchased through our website, freemasonry.org. I would be remiss not to mention a new program that we've put together called the Lodge Subscription Program, a new program of Masonic education designed for every lodge. It is the distribution of our Philalethes journal to your members through that program, with those members receiving an electronic delivery of our journal copy as it comes out each quarter. Those individuals are considered subscribers. They may not have some of the usual perks of a member, which is the subscription of a title at the end of their name or the appending of initials. Only those brothers who are members of your lodge are entitled to electronic PDF, and with the permission given with no permission given for redistribution. Your subscription is for 1 year, 4 issues. The Philalethes Journal comes out quarterly. A subscription begins with the quarter that you started. All subscriptions to this program must be made by a lodge check. They cannot be received any other way. We actively solicit articles for the Philalethes Journal, invite members to submit thoughtful and well-researched articles to our editor. He will critique those articles, assist with submitting admissions to meet our high quality of Masonic publication, and works with them in order to get those articles published if they have an interest. We indicate this program was begun because we were anxious to extend our mission of promoting quality Masonic education by offering the Lodge subscription program. Many Masons may prefer electronic dissemination of materials, and we put the journal into their hands through for a quest of further light in Masonry. A nominal annual fee to the Lodge, and that fee you can see at the bottom of the page is $250 for distribution up to 50 members, or $500 for distribution up to 100 members, and $750 for over 100. That amounts to $5 a member to receive electronically our journal, which otherwise, if you were receiving it in print form and electronically, would cost you $50. Of course, the significance is you're not officially a member of the Masonic of the Philalethes Society. But this program we just launched actually a year ago, and then COVID came along, and we were not able to really get it off the ground at that time. So I wanted to bring it to your attention because it is a wonderful opportunity for lodges and lodge brethren to continue their light and furtherance of light and Masonry by receiving the journal electronically. We are the only Masonic society that I know of that offers that opportunity. There's a lot that can be said about the differences in each of these societies. I probably won't go into that at this time unless you have a question, and I'll try to maybe answer some of those questions. I've taken up about a half hour of your time, so I'm glad to open this up to your questions and see where we go.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. That was a great presentation. Thank you. Brethren, if you have any questions, please, at this time, go ahead and unmute yourself and please ask away, or put them in the chat if you prefer. It's your choice.
Yes, Worshipful Brother Terry.
Yes,
Freeman here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Where does the MSA fit into this system? And tell me about their movement to Cedar Rapids.
Yeah. The Masonic Service Association could be put in, it is not technically a society or, of course, a research lodge. It is one of the education in Masonry and the oldest, technically, started in 1918. Their publication, of course, their major publication, of course, is the monthly
Short Talk Bulletin.
Short Talk bulletins, yes. And those go out to virtually every Grand Lodge, and then the Grand Lodges that subscribe to the MSA are able to get them sent out to virtually every member of their lodge as well. So they have a fairly large list of people that they're sending it to. They're not a society in that there's not a membership. The members of the Masonic Service Association are technically the Grand Lodges of North America. And they founded it. And they founded it initially for the purpose, as you may know, of visitation to the hospitals. It only then evolved into having an educational arm and put out a number of publications over the years, pamphlets, although there has not been any new pamphlets in the last few years. Some of the last ones that were put out were related to the crisis that we had with the Baptist Church and religion and Freemasonry. I serve on a committee of the Masonic Service Association called the Masonic Information Committee, and that committee is charged with being the public relations arm of Freemasonry, most specifically related to responding to our critics. The Masonic Service Association moved out of Washington, D.C. A year ago when its new executive director, Craig Davis, I believe is his name, he is the secretary for the Grand Lodge of Iowa, took over, and he decided it was easier to keep it in his building, which is the Cedar Rapids building, the Masonic Library at Cedar Rapids. And they moved virtually all of their records and everything there. And they also did it as, I believe the Grand Lodge of Iowa is not charging them rent. And of course, rent became an issue for them in terms of overhead expense. So that's basically what I know about it right now, John.
Thank you. Most worshipful, we have a question about how to join the Philalethes Society.
Very easy. Go to our website, freemasonry.org, and you can join there or renew there, as the case might be, electronically. Or occasionally individuals want to send a check, and they would send it to the secretary, which would be myself. But I can. My address and information is on the website as well.
Thank you. I have been a member for the Philalethes Society for several years now, and I've always enjoyed getting the publications. So
yeah, do you find the publication of interest?
Yes, I do. I look forward to it showing up and reading through the articles. So
sure, yeah. Well, I consider it one of the. You have to understand of the research groups that I mentioned to you that put out publications. I cannot speak to the Philalethes, but the Scottish Rite Research Society in its annual proceedings is essentially scholarly papers. Brent told me one time, I asked him, where does he solicit them from? Because these are authors I've never heard of. And he solicits them from universities that are working on master's degree papers. And many of them are actually put together through research out of universities. They are very scholarly. They are the highest quality academically, but many of them are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 pages in length, and they simply are too large to publish in any other form. Yeah. The Philalethes Society tries to keep its articles to about 2,000 words, but occasionally we will do an article that will overlap a couple of issues. Our articles are to the finest academic quality because we require that now, but and that's generally true with most Masonic education in the world today. We were virtually banned from any consideration in academic circles if it was Masonic because so much of it was perpetuation of myths and legends and history that was unproven. And consequently, most academic institutions said, we want nothing to do with you if you're a Mason. We recognized that about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and with people like Brent Morris, Art de Hoyos, Sean Iyer, and then many of the individuals that are publishing today, we have a quality of standard for our publications that is equal to most academic institutions today. And that is the standard. We simply do not take a lot of, you can have a personal opinion and express it, but as far as research papers, they've got to be researched and they've got to have notes and fully documented.
I've always enjoyed the articles. All right, brothers, any other questions?
Most personal are, this sounds nice. Thanks for sharing this excellent overview. But as with many cases in Freemasonry, it appears that the membership in the various societies and research-oriented groups is relatively small in comparison to the overall size of the membership at large. And I think this is another point where education is moving out of the lodge rather than moving back in. So my question to you is, are you aware of some initiatives, either by the various societies or research-oriented groups, to bring back some of that education, these nuggets, and the content in around Freemasonry back into the lodges?
Well, I would tell you, I'll answer a couple of different things. I would tell you, first of all, that probably COVID has caused us to bring more education back into the lodges than any other event that I can name in my lifetime. And I think it'll probably be a permanent change. I don't think we'll ever go back to not using electronic dissemination means and allowing more people to participate. Whether we'll ever get to the place of having a lodge meeting up electronically is another issue, although there is one Grand Lodge that I believe is either doing it or very close to doing it, and that is the Grand Lodge of Oregon. I know they've discussed it over 20 years ago already. You had asked about membership. Yes, it's true that overall there is smaller membership. I've often stated, and I've actually given a couple of talks about it, it's really 1% of 1%. If you talk about, 10% of 10%. If you talk about our lodges, the historical average of membership participation in our lodges on any given lodge night is 10%. That percentage has not changed in over 100 years. When you talk about, assuming you've got a lodge of 100 people, there would be 10 in lodge. If you're talking about how many are interested in Masonic education and truly pursuing it, it is 10% of those that are active. So it is maybe 1 of 100. That has been my experience over and over again, that when you're talking about those that actually research, read, look, do it as a lifelong profession, recognize it's significant in Masonry, it is 10% of the 10%.
Can I comment on that, Terry?
Sure, by all means.
I recently got the data from a survey that was done in Minnesota, and out of that survey, there were a couple of things that were quite amazing that somewhat not necessarily contradict what you just said, but that the vast majority of those that were surveyed, and more specifically about 40%, was hungering for more education in their lodge. If they were asked education, and I'm not talking about in-depth research, but just learning about Masonic values, Masonic allegories, symbolism, and the like, are clearly with a intent and purpose to make themselves better men. So in addition to that, if we look at what was in that particular survey, their greatest satisfaction it was nearly 60 or 65%, I don't recall the exact number, that felt that that little bit of education that was extended to them had given them a means of becoming a better man.
I don't doubt that, but when you take a look at the age, you'll see that almost that you're talking about a younger generation of Mason, not the older generations.
That's definitely true. The vast majority, 60%, was the millennials and the baby boomers were represented pretty much in that second group. So if we talk about a silent generation, it was a very small percentage.
A very small group, yeah,
but that's exactly the point.
The good news is there is an interest and a hunger for a number of brothers. It may not be in research societies or research lodges, the case might be, although some may be interested in it. I have not seen a large, we've certainly not seen that as a development in terms of membership in those groups, although we are getting younger members. And of course, in Masonry, we've had the TO movement that has very strong in the 1990s, early 2000s. Seems to have waned quite a little bit now, but there was some hope that somehow that was going to be the silver bullet that was going to reinvigorate Masonry. And to the best of my knowledge, there's about 55 TO lodges across the United States. There's not thousands. And we have how many thousand lodges across the United States? 14, 15,000?
So as for the latter part of my question, are you aware of any initiatives that these research societies are undertaking to bring that education back into the lodge?
The only one that I'm aware of is the Philalethes Society in terms of the initiative that it's taken with this lodge subscription program. Now, all of them will be more than glad to offer a lecture or a program to a group, but most of those lectures and groups are individuals where it's an education event of some kind, not a lodge event. It'd be lodge members, but isn't specifically in the local lodge. I would be curious any of your suggestions, anyone's suggestions as to how that might better be done. I think one of the $64,000 questions in Freemasonry.
Well, one of the things, and again, I'm referring to this survey, is that nearly 70% of the members would like to see the content of their stated meeting changed by bringing in either kind of a Masonic or otherwise non-business related topics. And I think this would be a great venue if the various lodges would have access to either online or otherwise presenters, and I personally have taken some of the articles in the short talk bulletins as well as the Philalethes publication, converted in some mini presentations for my lodge, because they are a tremendously valuable resource. And as you said, these topics are exhaustively explored. So with very little effort, you can convert them into a piece of nugget that is entertaining and educational for the lodge.
Yes, absolutely. And that was the intent of the short talk bulletins in part. In Minnesota, we were one of the earliest Grand Lodges in the United States to develop a lodge education program that required an officer to be named in the lodge. And that was specifically done so that Masonic education and the LEO sits at the left-hand side of the Worshipful Master in the East, specifically because we wanted to emphasize Masonic education as a necessary part of our lodge meetings. That initiative we started in 1993, and I was right front and center in doing that because we believed that it was that significant. Has it made a difference in Masonry in Minnesota? I can't answer that for you except to see what are the quality of the men that we have that are in the society, that are in our lodges.
Well, thank you, brothers. Worship Brother Don, did you have your hand raised? Did I catch that? Or
I was just going to say one of the things I've seen, each lodge obviously has its own unique personality, and understanding what your members are looking for in your lodge, I think, is critical. I think Masonic education is something that people really want and are looking for, but it's going to vary by lodge, and helping and understanding your members I think is critical. So I don't think with anything in masonry, I don't think it's a one size fits all. One of the interesting piece of demographics that I recently found is that the average age of, in the Metro West at least, which I think is pretty representative of the state, the average age of our members is almost 65 years old, of the Master Masons. But the average age of we've currently got about 100 guys going through the degrees right now. And the average age of those people that are joining is about 42. And I think that's an important thing to understand, that, and obviously a lot of guys are younger than that, but understanding that it's a different generation and they have different ways that they want information communicated. And I think Hans has got a great idea in terms of wanting to get that back into the lodges, but how we do it really has to be adapted to each lodge's unique situation.
Right. My experience is, unfortunately, too many of our lodges have their business part of the meeting and the things that we traditionally do take up so much time that any Masonic education is kind of a oversight or last thing. Instead of being front and center, it's really pushed down to the place where sometimes it doesn't even take place in the lodge. And it really needs to be an expectation in each lodge meeting that there will be a Masonic education component to it.
One of the things I've seen that I think has helped in some lodges, they move, a lot of lodges, Terry, like you said, tend to leave the LEOs like one of the last things, and everybody's ready to go home. And it's like, oh, now we're going to have the Leo. And it's like, oh, well, hurry up and get done. I want to go home.
Right.
But a number of lodges have started moving it up to early in the meeting and up front where people are still energized. And I think that's a simple little thing, but it makes a difference.
It makes a difference. And I think what we also need to recognize is there's nothing that says that we can't bring in the mayor of the city or some activity that's going on in our community and share some information. We will not do that during a tiled meeting, but we can certainly do it after a tiled meeting. And there's nothing that forbids that in Masonry from being done.
Oh. I know with one of my home lodges, we meet twice a month, and we converted the second meeting of the month to strictly just educational topics. Unless there's an urgent business matter that needs to be attended to, it is strictly about Masonic education.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, you cannot be a part of every research society or every lodge. I mean, you need to pick and choose. I belong to a number of them, but only because of a larger sense of interest and a necessity of knowing what's going on. But even with that, there are very good ones, and you can't be a part of all of them. You can't afford it. You can't afford the time. So you need to pick and choose what you're being a part of. But it's important to make some of those choices and informed choices. And you need to speak to other Masons that have been a part of these groups or know more about them to understand what you're getting and if it meets the needs or the interests that you have. I belong to, I get another subscription from a magazine that you may not have heard of, the Rocky Mountain Mason, probably one of the finest magazines in the United States, published out of Colorado with Ben Williams. And they just began another edition to their magazine called Esotericism, which is a new adjunct of what they're trying to do. The only magazine of its kind right now that I know Masonically exists. And the point I'm making out of that is that there are some resources out there and are some very excellent publications. And shop around a little bit, see what seems to be of interest to you and what will whet your interest and give you a greater encouragement.
Thank you. Brother
Yes.
Bruce, please.
I wanted to go back to the area of the lodges and membership and or attendance. we've been doing regular Leo work since about 2015. And in that time, it changed relatively quickly too. It changed our average attendance, I can speak to that, from maybe 15, sometimes less, to over 20 every meeting. And sometimes into the high 20s, depending on snowbird situations.
Mhm.
So it's what our brothers wanted. As far as how you do it, I wholeheartedly agree with find out what your lodge wants. You may start out doing something, having a plan and finding out that one of the presentations is a little different and everybody likes it, speaks up. You can not just be pushed, but use that as a guide to how you structure it. Our lodge, some lodges like longer educational sessions. Ours wants one that's 10 minutes. I guess sometimes I sneak up to 20 if I'm doing one myself, but not long is the word. And they'll hold out. Ours is like 8 out of 10 things on our agenda, but the brothers stay in there, hang in there, and they're anxious to see it when it comes. It's like the DJ that plays the record he's talking about at the end of his hour instead of at the beginning. So it isn't all bad if you don't get to the front. It kind of makes it sweeter when you get there, I think. So, and two, as far as our meetings are kept to roughly an hour because we meet once a month, as stated, but it's a Tuesday. Every other Tuesday is a Tussler Tuesday at Tussler Summit in Roseville. And we take care of streamlining our business. So when we present it on the first Tuesday of the month, it just goes smoothly. It isn't ramrodding it, it's getting it organized and not holding a circular debate for 2 hours on a stated night. So you've got a meeting. The brothers now know that thing isn't going to drag on, that it's pretty structured as far as not going on well into the evening. So there are several things you can do. Maybe your lodge meeting bylaws edict says you got to meet twice, but when we have only one and use the other Tuesdays to get everything straightened out, it's worked well. Also, we've had many people walk into our lodge building and become brothers on those other Tuesday nights. If they come in on our stated night, we say, can you come back next Tuesday? Because they see our building, they see the lights, and eventually we don't know how to find them. These people have no Masonic history. And it was great. They came in because we were there and in an informal mode, take them around the building, introduce them to the brothers, no weights, and everybody's dressed in street clothes instead of suits or tuxedos. So it fit very well. Well, I'll end my little speech here to the choir, and hopefully that will inspire you if you are not yet doing a regular programming. You don't have to worry about it being first or last. Do what fits for your lodge.
Thank you, brother. Brother Paulman, you posted a question here. I'm not sure I understand. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? I'm not sure I can give it justice that you put in the chat session.
Oh, okay. I tried to explain situation. We are not in normal working state. I mean, everywhere. We need to work under some restriction given by medical authorities regarding situation with COVID. But on the same time, we're losing a spirit of real work. If you're without candle in the temple and only in front of screen, what's the difference between this one and normal conference? Just only content of the speechless. So now we're looking how to organize our normal.
Can you speak up a little bit louder or into the microphone?
Louder or okay. Yeah. Our work here is we're trying to rework our paper for a normal regular work. For example, to exclude physical contact. How to do a regular work without physical contact.
Yeah,
You
how do you
what
do
is
it?
the problem?
Yeah, right. It's a problem, right?
This-
Well,
Who is
Yeah.
doing research and will propose some solutions about this?
so I know with
I'm skeptic. I'm really skeptic. I'm really skeptic that this should become better situation after several months. These several months are already 1 year, and
Right.
could be next year.
no.
Right.
So I know each jurisdiction is handling this the COVID situation differently. For Minnesota, our custodians are being cautious about how we perform the work and how we interact to help control the current pandemic that we have here in the States too. So it's an interesting times that we live in at this point in time with this situation. Brethren, is there any other questions that you would like to ask? Well, most worshipful Brother Terry, I thank you for your presentation, and right worshipful Brother Ralph, I'm going to put you on the spot and see if you have any last words for us as the ranking member of the Grand Lodge Minnesota attending with us. If you can find the mute button, that is.
I found it. I actually did. It blinks at me and says you are not on. So yeah.
Good.
The only thing I was going to add, and it has to do with the question that Playman asked. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name, but
Okay.
Our COVID committee is made up of about 7 people and includes, a lawyer and doctors and custodians and technical people. And we are going to have an open meeting next Monday. So if people have questions for how we got to where we are and where we are going with respect to what the COVID is doing to our lodges, that's going to be open and you're invited to attend. So
Yes,
how's that?
thank you. Very, very true. That is a good point.
Fine. Can I have an info how to join?
Glad to have you.
I got a question. Playman, if I'm not mistaken, you're a past Grand Master of Grand Lodge in Bulgaria, correct?
Absolutely.
Do you know what's going on in Bulgaria as far as all this stuff goes?
Well, I'm sharing with you what we are working here. We are trying to establish something like research lodge to find a real work in the 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, real work without contacts, without physical contacts. The rest of restrictions will be covered easy, no problem. But to make a choreography without physical contact needs something more, something to be researched, something to be proposed from the lodge with a big history. We have only 25, 30 years history. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, the reality is, Playman, it's virtually impossible to do the ritual work electronically. I mean, except except as you have an exemplar that you're showing, but there still has to be contact between individuals. I don't know of any grand jurisdiction, as I say, with maybe the exception of Oregon, which allows ritual work to be done electronically. I mean, Rolf, you've never heard of any. I don't know that there are any.
I've only heard that there were a couple that were looking at it, and I haven't seen any that has happened.
Okay. Yeah.
And Minnesota, in answer to that, allows contact because we use a degree team and they have contact, and it's done as a demonstration for the candidates. That's essentially the way we have worked around it for now for the 1st and 2nd degree.
Yeah. And we don't allow the 3rd degree to be done because it requires direct contact.
That takes more contact and it makes contact for everybody. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you, most worshipful Brother Terry, for the presentation.
Glad to
Brethren, for the conversation. I appreciate it. This was a good conversation and great presentation. With that, I am going to wrap up the recording.